Hey, what's up, guys? Here to do my thoughts video on Pillars of Eternity 1, including with both DLCs. I know the logo here is not showing that, but this will also include White March Part 1 and Part 2. I just finished the game yesterday, clocking it at around 120 hours. Pretty incredible experience, I would say. Both DLCs were about 20 hours each, I would say. I think the first one took me more like 30, because I did it right at about level 7 or 8, and doing it on scaling also made it very challenging in the beginning, whereas the second Part 2 was definitely not as challenging, but there was a lot of stuff to do. So starting with my thoughts on this video, I actually wanted to start breaking down my thoughts based on like categories and things like that. So I have a sheet here where I'm going to be talking about specific categories in games, and this will start encompassing for all games that I do, not just Pillars, but you know, and then depending on the game, I might have a specific thing that I talk about for the game. All in all, though, you know, just to get out of the way, this game is incredible. This game would easily be like a 9 out of 10, an A+ out of an S ranking kind of a thing. And the reason why I wouldn't give it a 10 is because there are some things that could use some work. And let's face it, no game is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect game. My favorite game of all time, I would give a 9 out of 5, a 9.5. Not a 9 out of 5. That'd be insane. Yeah. So first, I want to talk about the overall primary narrative of Pillars of Eternity. Specifically the core game, not the DLC, but the core game, and then we'll talk about the DLC after. Is that it's amazing. It's absolutely wild, and it makes you really think about a lot of stuff too, because, you know, spoilers, okay, so everybody, you know, spoilers, this game encompasses a lot about a world where when you die, your souls go back to what they call as the wheel, and your soul is reborn in someone else who gets born. And most of the time, the vast majority of the time, no one is the wiser of this. But every now and then, there are people who become awakened, and they start having memories of their past lives, and sometimes more than just the memories, their entire beings will be within them, and they'll be literally split personalities because there's literally multiple people in their minds. But that's pretty rare. There's a few cases that does happen in the game, though. And so it's kind of interesting to think about. The game really goes into depth with a lot of political stuff, as well as religion of multiple gods and things. And a very strong part of the story that you start learning about at the end. And if you were paying attention, you kind of got this idea a little bit before the end. You would have come to this conclusion, is that the gods are not real. But are they real? So that's one of those things. And I always thought about this because the game starts off basically talking about how one of the gods was killed. They killed one of the gods. And if you're a god, an all-omnipotent being, how can you die? So that's what you find out, that the gods they're not real, but they're real. They were actually fabricated. They were created by an ancient civilization, because their world was starting to get into turmoil and all this kind of stuff, and they needed things for people to believe in. So they created these extremely powerful, in a sense, they're basically golems, animated beings, but they are so powerful, they kind of are omnipotent. They're all-seeing, in a sense. They basically are they literally do everything that the people believe they can do, except they were created by an ancient civilization. So that actually kind of comes to thing like, well, okay, does it matter if they were created? Or does that matter because they actually were created? Is that a thing? You know, so that becomes something that it's a really big thinking point in the game, and I wonder if the second game is going to have anything to do with that. I haven't played Part 2, or the second game, and I definitely will be in the future. Yeah, the narrative, I think, is very strong. It starts off, you know, you're just some random dude on an adventure, basically, and you awaken very early on in the game, and you start learning all this stuff. I'm like, ooh, you actually start earning a castle, and then you have to political stuff going on in Defiance Bay, and then you have to go to the Twin Elms, and stuff's going on over there, and all this while you have the overarching narrative of following this guy that you learn about, that his name is Theos, and you finally confront him eventually at the end of the game, and you deal with him, and that's when you learn about a lot of these things up front, where the game confirms all these things about the gods and whatnot. And the world is amazing. There's so much, and really the whole game takes place in the country of the Deerwood. This is just one country of the entire world. I believe the world is Eora, or yeah, Eora, E-O-R-A, is the world, but the game takes place in Deerwood, which is a particular country. And they talk about many other places. One of your characters is basically a representative from a nation called the Valian Republics. The only little bit that we really get to know about him is through one of your companions is from there, and there's an embassy for those guys in Defiance Bay. But they're a whole another nation. I wonder if they're in number 2. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I think the narrative in this game, this is an area where I would give it a 10 out of 10. It is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so with that, I want to go to another next thing I want to talk about, is I want to then talk about the combat in the game, to kind of like switch it up from type of categories. Combat. Sorry about the focus. This is an area where, excuse me, I could see people not being completely happy about. Or at least it's definitely not a 10 out of 10. I'm not going to give it a 10 out of 10. It is a real-time with pause, which for anyone who's played any of the classics or a lot of, CRPGs should know that real-time with pause is actually the standard, and full turn-based is more of a modern thing with like Divinity Original Sin and 2. And I do know that they made a patch in PoE 2 where they revamped the whole game to, if you want to play it turn-based, which I will not be. But with that, with playing in real-time pause comes with a little bit of it comes with the issue of the AI is going to be controlling your characters at some points and things like that. No matter how much you pause and queue up commands, the AI still is going to be in control with a lot of things. And I did have issues sometimes with the AI's movements. If my characters are trying to fight one or two guys and there's a narrow choke point, but all they have to do is literally walk around a tree and then they can fight them from behind, the characters would not do that. They would just stand behind the other characters not doing anything if they were melee. And that was frustrating. I mean, granted, of course, all I got to do is I got to manually move the characters, but couldn't the AI, I told it to attack the guy, and the AI was like, oh, can't reach, therefore then they just do nothing. Like, all you got to do is walk 2 feet around the tree or a pillar or whatever. And that happened quite frequently. But my party was a lot of AoE. I had double mages, so that helped in that sense. Overall, though, the combat was pretty good, I would say. It was pretty balanced, and I was, keep in mind, I was playing this game on Path of the Damned difficulty, first time blind playthrough on Path of the Damned, and it felt really good. It felt fantastic in terms of the difficulty curve for me. I don't know what the other difficulties would feel like, but it felt very, very good. The only point in the entire game where I felt maybe the curve was bad was doing the first DLC. That I did have some problems with, but we'll get into that when I talk about the DLC. But overall the combat was really good. There's a wide variety of classes and characters, and they're all very unique. I tried everybody, but I didn't stick with everybody, that's for sure. I pretty much stuck with the particular party that I had in mind even before I even got a lot of the characters. Yeah, mages, there's everything fantasy that you can think of, sword and sorcery, wizards, priests, druids, bards, basically, they call them chanters, ciphers, and they're like mind controller guys, rogues, barbarians, fighters, paladins. It's all in the game. And they all pretty much do what you think they're going to do. So let's go ahead and talk about character development. Now, this is one that I was happy with and a little bit disappointed with. So, every single companion in this game has their own side quest, and you get to learn about them. You get to learn very well about all these characters and what their purpose is, like what's driving them, why are they in your party, why, you know, all this kind of stuff. Some of them are super, super good. And some of them are just, I could care less. So that was kind of a problem. With my primary party, I ended up using my character with Edir, Alof, Pelagina, Devil of Karak from the first DLC, and Durance. I think almost everybody's probably using Durance, so he's a priest. How do you not use a priest? I loved Durance's backstory, his quest line and everything. That was fantastic. I also loved the way that it worked, was that his quest just slowly unveiled itself over time. You didn't even have to really do anything. It was always just travel with Durance. And over time, you just started having more stuff opened up, and you would have dialogues with him. Whereas somebody like Edir, you complete his quest in the first third of the game. But then after that, you just really have... There's nothing. You wanted to, you know, kind of find out about his brother, and you find out about his brother, and then you're done. The end. Basically. So I was very disappointed with his. Pelagina's was... kind of cool, kind of not. Hers was a little more... Alloth's was pretty interesting, because he was another awakened character, so he had another personality inside of him. And you kind of got to decide whether or not did he accept the other person inside of him, or did he try to expel this person from him. And I chose to accept, to let this person, you know, so it really was just two people working together. I thought that was really cool. And because he is like you, your character, his point of views and stuff actually are very relevant throughout the whole game. The Devil of Karak, yeah, her character storyline was, I'll admit, I thought it was very, very weak. Probably the weakest of the ones that I did. But, I mean, what are you going to do, you know? So, and I should say, and for character development, I'm probably going to give it an 8 out of 10. Something like that, just because there was some characters were really good, some of them were mediocre, some of them I thought were terrible. But the ones that were good were very, very good. Let's talk about the music in the game. So this is going to be another category that I talk about. I'm hoping in the future I'm going to actually start putting things up on the screen. It's going to be things that I'm going to have to work on as well. But let's talk about the music. The music in this game, perfect. Absolutely perfect. If we're talking just the musical score of everything of the music, when it plays, how it plays, all this kind of stuff, it's a 10 out of 10. It's going to kind of bleed into, though, I have another category. I have to come up with a better name for the category, but it's going to encompass things like bugs, glitches, issues with the game from a technical standpoint. So we'll call this technicalities or something like that. And there was many times where, for some reason, I'd be in a fight, music starts, boom, and then I do a pause to cue up some spells, and then just music's gone. There's just no sound except like the sound effects, and everything else is just gone. I'm like, that sucks. So that happened quite a bit with the combat music, which was unfortunate because while I didn't really care so much if it happened in a regular fight, when you're like doing an epic fight, the music it changes. If you're doing regular, scrubs, fighting some scrub mobs versus fighting like a big epic battle in a keep and you're fighting some name dude or something, it was really, really important. And then maybe the music was really, I don't know, drove the emotion of the fight. But I really enjoyed the fact that the music was it wasn't over the top. It reminded me very much of something like Lord of the Rings, even, of its style. And I wonder if that's kind of what they were going for, because, I don't know, I thought of Lord of the Rings many, many times when I was hearing the music in this game, and it was perfect, aside from some of the bugs. And so going into that, I'm going to talk about more of, any issues. This will be a category going forward, so it could be a short category, it could be a long category. In the game, I crashed twice in my playthrough of this game. Keep in mind, I'm playing this game 5 years after it came out. And I crashed twice. I don't know if that's on the game's end, if that's on my end. I don't know. I never got any bug thing. It's like I'm just playing the game and it just straight closed. There was no error or bug splat or anything. The game just closed. And it was as if the game was never open. I'm like, what? So that was kind of strange. That happened twice in my playthrough. Both times happened probably in the first half, though. I would say about the first half of the game. And then aside from that and the music sometimes going out, like cutting in and out of fights and things like that, there was only one other issue that I had, and that was if I played very, very long sessions, and it didn't happen every time too, but sometimes when I had play sessions that were over 8 hours, my cursor would disappear in combat. I would have no cursor, and I'd have to restart the game. So that was a little weird. I don't know, but it didn't happen too many times. It happened maybe 5 or 6 times total, and I've played the game. It took me 17 different days to play, and I think like 15 of those were 7 to 8 hours, and if it happened about half of those times, so that kind of sucked. I'm not going to give this category any kind of like a rating, because how do you rate that? Last category, though, will be all the other systems, the mechanics and everything like that. I talked about combat, but I want to talk about all the other system mechanics in the game, such as inventory, skill trees, items, things like that. Things that don't deal with combat, but have everything else to do with the game. All in all, very, very good. Probably an 8.5 for me. Inventory management could have used some work. I did, at the closing end of my stream, when I beat the game, say something that was incorrect, and that there is a way to categorize the inventory by price and all this kind of stuff. You actually can do that, but I never did because I kind of forgot that I was there, which is why I said what I said. But you can do that. But like when you're selling, I wish you could just click a button, sell everything of this rarity or worse, and it would just sell all that stuff. Or junk, or things like that, or if there was junk items, but there's nothing like that. So you can't do that. You have to click everything, click, 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 click. That's a little unfortunate when you're selling. It's the same thing if you're buying, but it's never obviously much of an issue when you're buying things. It's when you're trying to sell your 10,000 swords and tunics and things like that. Inventory definitely was where I had the majority of my issues. Being able to properly manage, but I did like the fact that you have unlimited space and all that kind of stuff. That's always nice in these kind of games. The other thing would be the map, and only in really the endless paths. So when you go to the endless paths, there's 15 levels. Spoiler. Every 2 to 3 levels, you have a master staircase that you can take to warp all the way back to the top, back to Cadnua. But if you wanted to do that, you had to drag the map all the way up to click exit to the top. I could be an idiot, and there might have been a faster way to do that, but there should have been, regardless of what floor you're on, just a click button to go straight to the top. Maybe there was. I didn't see it. Every time I had to drag the map and then click at the very top. So that was a little unfortunate for me. And if I wanted to go to a particular level as well, I had to drag around the map because it was only a particular size, and I couldn't make the thing bigger or not. There was that. But now, if we're talking about character development, level ups, and all that kind of stuff, it's exactly what I wanted in this kind of a game. Perfect. Every level, you chose a little bit of your character's points, whether it was in survival, athletics, lore, sneaking, mechanics. There might have been one other one. And then I think it alternated in levels between class abilities and things like that to level up versus overarching abilities of things that were for like every character. Like weapon specialization, armor specializations, and these kind of things versus, oh, you're a wizard, okay, learn some wizard spells. Or you're a priest, you learn priest spells. Kind of alternated, I think. And I really, really liked that. So by level 16 was the max level if you have the DLCs. and you cannot have everything. And that is something that I love. I hate games that allow you to get everything, because it ruins the ability to want to play the game again. It kills replayability to me if you can do literally everything in one playthrough. That being said, some of those games do have their place, and it works. But a game like this is a game because you can have different party makeups and all this kind of stuff. So I want there to be as much replayability as possible if there's already that factor. And there is. So that's really, really good. I like that a lot. If we're talking just pure loot, the types of loot that's in the game, I think it's great. Absolutely fantastic. And it does a really good job of standard stuff of like, no colorization, it's probably junk. Light colorization, you know, it's decent. Then you have unique, and then you have soulbound items, and they all color coded differently, which is nice, very fantastic. All this kind of stuff has different abilities. The only thing that I would have liked is crafting could have been a little bit better. So you can craft scrolls, you can craft potions, you can craft food. These are all things that I didn't use that much of, but I used a little bit. Potions basically are, a way to give, a non-caster ability to cast some spells really quickly. If whatever the potion, same thing with scrolls. And to use scrolls, you have to have high lore skill. And then there's food for these minor buffs, but they last quite a long time. So it's good to use those. There's traps you can lay out if you want to like preemptively plan for a fight. And you can craft all these things, but you can't craft actual gear. That was a little disappointing. I would have been really, really happy if you could craft actual armor. But you can enchant armor, so you can, a lot of stuff, unless it was soulbound, you could buff up items and your gear. You can make it a higher rarity of exceptional to superb to legendary, mythic. You can add weapons, change their weapon damage types and things like that, which is really, really cool. But like I said, I would have preferred to see a little bit more in-depth crafting, I think. That would have been pretty nice. But yeah, all in all, that's very good. And this has been a pretty long video, but I think I might want to have my videos to be a little bit longer, because I do want to talk about all these things with the games that I play. Pillars of Eternity, with both DLCs, White March Part 1 and Part 2. Fantastic, like I said. 9 out of 10. This game's a 9 out of 10, man. I'm looking forward to playing part number 2. Actually, I don't remember if I said 8.5, but we're going to say it's a 9. I'm going to say it's a 9. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you next time. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of these videos. Hopefully I can do them more frequently, and yeah. See you later. Peace.